Thank you to the Wolfeboro Lions Club for underwriting Nutritional Wisdom. The Wolfeboro Lions Club is committed to helping the community with health concerns such as diabetes prevention and preservation of sight and hearing. The Wolfeboro Lions Club meets on the second and fourth Tuesday of the month in the 1812 room at the Wolfeboro Inn. Members of the community are encouraged to attend meetings or visit the website e-clubhouse.org/sites/Wolfeboro for more information.
Hi, this is Patty Walker, registered dietitian and certified diabetes educator, and your host of Nutritional Wisdom. Today will be the 6th in an interactive series of diabetes classes. Again, I will be using materials from the Diabetes Conversation Maps, which are the same used in many certified diabetes education programs. My goal is to provide you with the necessary information you need to manage your diabetes from the comfort of your home. As before, these classes work best with interaction, so once again, I'm going to be joined by Dawn and Michelle, and we'll review sample blood sugar numbers and work together to interpret what they mean and how to make changes to optimize your blood sugar control. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to give you a chance to test your knowledge on another test. This is really these are blood sugar cards. This is kind of what a blood sugar report would look like. So you're going to see that it's divided into different columns: before breakfast, after breakfast, before lunch, after lunch, before dinner, after dinner, and bedtime, and 3 a.m. Some people actually have to wake up in the morning because if they just recently started on insulin overnight, or they're persons with type 1 and they're at risk for low blood sugars in the middle of the night, we need to adjust things so that they don't have those events while they're sleeping. So before I give you these cards, I do want to review some blood sugar targets. Any recollection of what a good blood sugar target before a meal would be? Do you remember any of those? I know it's been a couple classes ago.
I'm going to say before maybe 100 to 115.
Okay. Dawn?
I'd agree with that.
Okay. Yep, that's smack in the middle. So that's great. And after a meal?
150 to 180.
Okay.
130, 150.
Okay. So what we're looking at, so there's a couple standards. Today we're going to use the American Diabetes Association standards, and they are going to recommend 90 to 130 before meals and fasting in the morning.
Okay.
And 2 hours after the meal, they recommend 90 to 180. Okay. If you're A1, and that keeps your A1C around 7. So that's another way. So I say when the blood sugars and the A1C should correlate. If your numbers are between 90 and 130 mostly before meals and under 180 2 hours after a meal, your A1C is going to be 7 or under. Okay. And if you have a lower A1C than that, well, then we're going to give you lower blood sugar targets. We're going to say 70 to 110 before a meal or under 140 after a meal. But we always want to keep it above 70 because remember, 70 is the bottom before you treat a low blood sugar. Okay. We have some cards here. I'll give you each a card. So I just handed out the cards. It says example 1, and remember, having a target is so important so that you know what you're aiming at. Otherwise it's like playing darts blindfolded. And monitoring is going to make a big difference in your control, especially if you understand how to use the results. So what do you see? This person is only testing before meals, and that's great. My gosh, testing 3 times a day. We're using the 90 to 130 as the target ranges for those meals. So do you notice any patterns? What do you see on these cards? How does breakfast look?
Breakfast looks pretty good. Lunch is what is challenging.
Okay, so lunch is challenging. Are they too high or too low?
Too low.
Okay, and what about supper?
Well, it looks okay.
Yeah,
90 to 130, so you're right. Yeah, so if that's your goal, 90 to 130, then your breakfast and supper numbers are really good, but what on earth is going on at lunch? So what might be some reasons why the numbers are low at lunch?
What time was lunch?
Great. Could have had a late lunch. Yep. Maybe they're waiting too long to eat. Yep. Anything else that can cause blood sugars to go down?
How much activity did they do during the day before lunch?
Yeah, too much activity. So a delayed meal, too much activity, and there's one more that really is classic of low blood sugars. Too much of taking too much,
Insulin.
Yeah.
Or medication.
taking too much medication. Yep. So I actually tell my clients that, first of all, the number one treatment goal in diabetes is to prevent low blood sugars. So if these were the blood sugars, that person I would be hoping would be treating their blood sugar before lunch on day 1 and day 3. So they would actually be taking a half a cup of orange juice or half a cup of regular soda or 3 glucose tabs, whatever their usual treatment for low blood sugar is. Treat it, wait 15 minutes, retest before they have their lunch, because you don't want to, because so many of my clients say, oh, I just won't take my insulin when it's that low. And then what will happen is they'll end up with high blood sugars at supper. So in this case, that doesn't seem to be the case. So I'd be looking at the medication. It may be a sign that they need less medication, and that would be great, So it means that you're sticking to your plan, you're doing some good lifestyle changes, and you need less medication. So that's an example of where the numbers work in your favor. It's not like they're good or bad, but you want to know how to treat them, and then you want to know what to do with them.
Yep.
Okay? Well, you did a great job with that one.
All right.
So the next one is a little bit more complicated. This is example number 2.
Okay.
And on this one, we have numbers before lunch, before breakfast, after lunch, before and after supper. So this one will be more indicative of a person that probably is taking insulin 3 times a day. Okay? So again, the goals are 90 to 130 before meals and less than 180 after a meal. 90 to 180 after a meal. So how do they start off in the morning?
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even before lunch is good.
Yeah.
And before dinner.
Yep. Notice they didn't test all the time before lunch and dinner, and that's okay. So, any problems with any of these then?
Well, I'd say the after lunch and the after dinners are too high, and so that's 2 hours after dinner, right?
2 hours, yep. So these, we're assuming that they were taken 2 hours after the meal. And if you would remember, at one point I said, if you do test before and after the same meal, what you would want to do is add 50 points to the pre-meal number
Right.
and not exceed that after a meal.
And that's truly exceeding.
Okay.
On that one.
Right.
Actually, on both of them.
Yep. Okay. So, so if you don't know your pre-meal number, then use 180 as your goal to have it under. And if you do know your pre-meal number, add 50 to the pre-meal number and use that as your goal. So yeah, every single after meal number is high. Why do you think?
Well, they probably were not sticking to a healthy diabetic meals.
So maybe ate too much carbohydrate.
Right.
Or possibly had a fast food meal or a meal high in fat, so 2 hours later they're higher than they would have been, so their carbohydrate might have been within their goal, but because of the fat, it slowed the rise of blood sugar. So this is kind of what it would normally be an hour after a meal when it would peak. So we're looking at the peak. So could have been a high fat meal, too much carbohydrate. Anything else that might cause that blood sugar to go up?
Maybe the medication is not enough.
Yeah. Because again, as we get older, we do produce less insulin. So these numbers help us pinpoint when and why blood sugars are high. So in these cases, I certainly wouldn't do anything about trying to alter the pre-meal numbers, but the after-meal numbers are high. So what could you do if this was you? What would you do if you saw those after-meal numbers?
Well, one thing you could do is take a 10-minute walk after dinner.
Oh, that is so good. Yeah. Exercise is going to lower
Yeah,
those blood sugars.
after each one of these meals, and just see what happens.
Yeah. Yep.
You don't go from the dinner table to the couch?
Well,
And reclining doesn't count. This does not count as exercise. Nor does this. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But you talked about the fact that having the exercise right after the meal, particularly if you have pasta or that
Yeah,
sort of
because
thing.
it is 15 minutes of continuous activity can
Right.
open up all the cells to get sugar into it. And persons with gestational diabetes, that's diabetes while you're pregnant, you know, some women have that. That is a key factor to helping them have healthy blood sugar controls, is to have a walk after a meal, a 10 to 15 minute walk after a meal.
What a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
Yep, so-
something that you can do anytime, really.
Yep.
And it's healthy and social. It could be.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Lots of benefits. Yeah. After a big Thanksgiving meal, we always
Yes,
go for a walk.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Otherwise, we would be asleep on the couch with that tryptophan rise. Yeah. So, okay, so you have high blood sugar, so you could go for a walk. You could, if you didn't want to increase your medication, what else might you be able to do with those high blood sugars? What else could you look at?
Kind of look at what you're eating.
Yes.
And maybe see if there's a trend of, you like only pastas, or you like a lot of potatoes or something like that. Maybe you could switch things out.
Yep. Eat
So
more vegetables.
If you were out driving and you're going to get some fast food,
Uh-huh.
the fast food is going to be mostly or a lot of fat.
Yep. Even though the
So-
carbohydrates look good, like a burger,
Right.
I don't care if it's a single burger or a triple Whopper, the roll is the carbohydrate. Everything else is the meat and fat. And you will have high blood sugars after that meal. and
So
you
do
only
we have
30 grams.
what would be a good alternative when you're on the road?
Great question. Can you think of anything? I can help you out, but can you think of, if you're at
Salads.
the salads with the chicken or the grilled meat on it?
Even just taking the bun off. Or even taking one bun off and just having half of a
But
bun.
you're right. I mean, all those things make a difference.
Yeah.
And chili. If you go to Wendy's, they have a nice bowl of chili.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So chili, and that has some great beans in it, which
Yep.
really keeps you a good amount of fiber, keeps you from being hungry later. But yeah, so have the burger and not the fries. So maybe just hold the fries and just have the burger. Eat the salad with the grilled chicken. Those types of things. But fast food ideally is not a mainstay, but it certainly fits in. Yeah, a couple pieces of pizza instead of the whole pizza. So have a salad with the pizza. If you're at a Chinese restaurant, you want the sautéed vegetables and meat with brown rice, and a small amount of brown rice, fistful, or your fist size, versus white rice and General Gao's. Yeah. You can guarantee high blood sugars after that meal, otherwise.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's nice that there are options for every restaurant.
There is.
that
Yep.
you can go.
And you can ask. You're the patron, so you get to.
Yep.
You're the paying person, so ask them. Okay. Ask them to put it on the side. Ask them to hold the bun. They'll do that. Okay. Yeah. And the other thing I would do is drink lots of low-calorie fluids. Remember that that's an option if your blood sugars are high and you don't want to feel tired, and you're going to be increased thirst anyways, and you're going to be increasing going to the bathroom. Drink lots of water or low-calorie fluids, and that can help lower those blood sugars quicker.
So other than water, what's another low calorie?
Any of the flavored waters that
Okay.
natural flavored, so you have to look at the label to make sure there's not added sugar, because some of them do. Diet sodas do have no calories. Crystal Light. There's some controversy about the artificial sweeteners out there, because it can impact your gut microbiome, and because you didn't get the sugar your brain's expecting, when it tastes that sweetness on your tongue, it may promote sugar craving. So there's actually mixed information as far as sugar-free and the benefits of sugar-free beverages. But stevia would be, especially the liquid stevia is a great low-calorie or non-calorie sweetener. And teas, plain tea, herbal teas, black coffee, decaf are other sources of fluids if you don't like the water. Or lemon.
I buy the seltzer water,
Yep.
and I think you told us that gives your stomach a more full feeling.
Well, it does, carbonation. And then since I've said that, I've learned that carbonation isn't the best either.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
it hasn't anything to do with diabetes. It's more about the blood pH and what it does to your teeth and all that good stuff.
Really?
But, yeah, phosphoric acid. So, water's your best option.
Yep.
Water's always your best option.
Right.
All right, so going for a walk, drinking low-calorie fluids, looking back at your meal to say, did I eat too much carbohydrate or fat, are great things. And sometimes the answer to the question is, you've had diabetes for a long time, your body's producing less insulin. This is a way that we can correlate why your blood sugars are high. If you had only tested before your meals, and you see that the blood sugars are always normal, and this is what my dad did. He only tested before his meals, and his it's like, oh, my blood sugars are great, and then the A1C comes back at an 8 or a 9%. They're mismatched.
Right.
So this is what we're missing. We're missing the after meal numbers.
Right.
And the after meal numbers could indicate either you're eating too much carbohydrate or that you're not producing enough insulin and we need to relook at medications. Okay? Or lifestyle, go for a walk. I mean, I had a gentleman do this and his pre-meal numbers were high and he didn't want to take any extra medication. I said, well, you have that treadmill. So he chose 30 minutes on the treadmill. When he got home after a 12-hour day, he got up at 3 a.m., went to work at 6, got home at 6. He worked 3 or 4 days a week and still went on the treadmill.
Oh my gosh.
Yep, because he didn't want medication. So we are in charge of our diabetes and we do get to make those choices. All right. Well, you did great work. I really, really appreciate hopefully that you learned a little bit on this one. That was, they're not easy. And it shows how complicated these can be, okay? So one of the patterns we didn't see was what happens if your blood sugars are low in the morning. You wake up and you're having low blood sugars. And I wish the card showed that. And that would be an indication that maybe you need to cut back on, if you're on insulin at night, a long-term insulin, or maybe cut back on your metformin. And if your blood sugars are consistently over 130 in the morning and you're not on the full therapeutic dose of metformin, which is 1,000 milligrams twice a day, it's an indication that we should bump up the metformin if you can tolerate it. Okay, so there's
So what about having a glass of juice by your bedside, and the first thing you do when you get up in the morning is drink the juice, and then you would take your blood pressure or your blood glucose.
Well, if you take the juice before you know what your blood sugar is, why would you do that? But no, that does bring up one more point. If you're out and about and you feel like you're having a low blood sugar and you don't have your meter with you, still treat. Okay, always treat. If you get those symptoms of low blood sugars come on quickly. Okay, all of a sudden you're just not feeling well, and they're most of us have the same symptoms, whether it's shaky, dizzy, sweaty, nausea. Those are the classic ones. But remember, rapid heart rate is also one. Irritability, anxiety. All of a sudden you're like, you're not even thinking what you're doing, and you're rubbing your hands, and people are like, what's up with you?
Yeah.
So if you don't have your meter, still treat the low blood sugar, okay? With just 15 grams of carbohydrate, which is, 4 ounces of juice or, 5 lifesavers, things like that. Okay, so it's you did a great job with the cards and you at home, this just shows the benefit of writing down your blood sugars in an easy to read format and testing at the times that are meaningful, which are before and after meals, because it can make a big difference in your diabetes control. Remember, it's just a number, but it's going to help you improve your control. If you don't understand the numbers or see the patterns, just continue to bring your logs and your books to your healthcare team, and we can help you out with them, okay? And we'll just review them together. That is one of my most favorite activities to do with my clients, because I then pass the control back to them, because they are the people with control.
Right.
And, I'm one of the support people on the bus, but they're the people with control. During the show, Michelle, Dawn, and I brainstormed on ways to make the dining experience work. Since we have a couple extra minutes, I'd like to offer a bonus section to give you more detail on ideas on dining out with diabetes. I hope you'll find this helpful. Having diabetes doesn't mean you have to stop enjoying life's pleasures. And that includes dining out. You can eat out and still stay on your meal plan. Here are some tips that can help. One of the first things to recognize is that timing should be taken into account. So the reason for this is you want to try to stay on your usual eating schedule. There are some people with diabetes that take a combination insulin, for example, that would be a 70-30 or a 75-25, and it's designed to be taken before your meals at breakfast and at dinner time. And, the medication works best when taken on a regular basis. So in that situation, if you're on those combination medications, it's also pretty important to keep your meal plan as consistent as possible. Just like it's not advisable to eat all your carbohydrates in one meal, it's also not advisable to have only one meal a day or eat too much at one meal. Consistency, you'll find, is a good friend as far as diabetes, as far as your diabetes control there. Another thing to consider is the timing of your meals in that respect, because you get to the restaurant, you order your meal, and you have no control as to how soon the food's going to be delivered. So you could ask your waiter or waitress, the server on that one. But one of the tips I do tell my clients is to review the menu items online to speed up the ordering process. And that works especially well if there's only a couple people in the party, yourself and maybe one or two others. But if it's a large group, that's not going to be as efficient, but then you could perhaps ask when the meal might be served, or at least try to have reservations with the idea of having your meal time maybe a half hour after your reservation. So if you usually eat at 6 o'clock, make reservations for 5:30. You may find that be very helpful. And lastly, the timing of your medication is also important. There are many of my clients that have mealtime insulin, which they would have to take the insulin ideally before the first bite of the food. And they're hesitant to bring their insulin to restaurants or out in public areas. I really, really encourage you to rethink that and to bring your insulin along. If it's an insulin pen, very easy, it could go in your pocket or your purse. And if it's a syringe, you could pre-fill the syringe and just cap it and have it in, again, your pocket or purse. And then excuse yourself and just use the restroom. And again, the timing of that, you can usually take those medications up to 15 minutes before the start of the meal. Or if you see the waiter coming over with the food, maybe that's a good time to excuse yourself and just go over and get to the bathroom and do the medication. I also have some clients that have no hesitancy as far as just discreetly lifting up the shirt and injecting at the table. So you would need to, fess out the other people at the table to see if that's something that they're comfortable with also. But you're the person with diabetes, you're the person that needs to control it, and in all honesty, what works best for you is what should be done in that case. But just try to bring your medication with you, because if you don't, and many clients will say, oh, I just take it when I get home, half the time they forget to do that, or the insulin is not peaking at the same time that their blood sugars are, so they're setting themselves up for lower blood sugars later on. So again, the timing of the meal and timing of your medication will make a difference in your optimal support there. So I do encourage you to think about all those things. All right, next up is ordering. So the first thing to do is think about the bread. There's a couple ways you can handle that. If you do plan on having bread as part of your meal plan, that's great, no issues, but you want to consider the number of pieces and if the sight of a full basket of bread is going to make you more apt to overeat. So a couple things you can do is ask the waiter to bring enough bread for single servings for people at the table, or if you prefer to save your carbohydrates up for a different part of the meal, perhaps a small dessert or a larger potato, then maybe ask the waiter not to have the bread at all, because if you're hungry and the bread's on the table, motivation isn't always going to be your best friend, and you're going to be more apt to indulge. And bread is one of those things that can spike your blood sugars pretty quickly. Other things is to look at how food is prepared. Again, we've mentioned before, high-fat meals can keep blood sugars elevated longer. So look for preparation terms such as grilled or broiled, steamed, baked. Those are lower fat, steamed. Yep, I did say steamed. So those are lower fat preparations, and you would just do better off with those versus fried or au gratin. Another tip that a lot of my clients will use is asking for sauces to be omitted, or half the sauce, or asking for the sauces or dressings on the side. And that just gives you more control as far as the calories, but also as far as the amount that you use. And a Weight Watcher trick, I am taking this right off of Weight Watchers, is to dip the fork into the dressing, then put it on your salad, so that when you do eat the bite of salad, the last thing you have on the fork is the dressing, so it helps to coat and it gives you a better mouthfeel. So that's just something to consider if you're trying to cut calories with the dressings. Also look at the entire menu. There are lots of combinations out there that you may not have thought of or aren't listed with each entree, but maybe you can mix and match. An example is, let's say a restaurant has a spaghetti squash special, and it's an Italian restaurant, so you're looking at the menu and you want chicken parmesan, for instance, and it says, what type of pasta do you want? Well, you could ask your waiter if you perhaps could have the spaghetti squash instead. They're there to accommodate you, so it's very rare that they don't offer substitutions, or if you see one meal has asparagus or a winter squash, and you'd rather have winter squash instead of rice or potato, if it's in the kitchen, I'm sure they can accommodate it. And another thing to do is just consider, especially if you did enjoy a piece of bread or an alcoholic beverage, or perhaps waiting to save for dessert, ask for a double serving of vegetables. And again, remember, the non-starchy vegetables are your better options. The starchy vegetables would be potato, corn, winter squash, and peas. Okay, so you don't want a double serving of those. You want a double serving of the non-starchy vegetables. And that will help fill you up too. Again, portion size, you don't always have control once it's at your table. So if you really want to have that pasta meal and chicken parm, then perhaps think about splitting the meal with someone at the table. Some restaurants may charge an extra $2 to $5 for that, but in the long run, it may be less expensive and is going to help you stay on your meal plan. Another option is to consider ordering 2 appetizers, because generally the appetizers are better portion controlled. And again, don't be afraid to ask questions. Remember, as I said before, you are the customer, and it's the restaurant's job to accommodate all reasonable orders. That said, if you do have a very, very good dining experience and they did accommodate I do encourage you to show your appreciation with a tip, a good tip, because the service people work very hard, and the restaurant, and also, give good reviews on the restaurant to Yelp or just to word of mouth to family and friends, because you want to encourage good service. Okay? All right, so now the dinner arrives. What do you do? The first thing I recommend for portion control is the plate method. For those that are unfamiliar with that, divide your plate in half. Half the plate is non-starchy vegetables. So if you don't have enough vegetables on that plate, then what you might want to do is order a side salad and save part of it for the supper. Or just, have the salad with the supper, or you could have the salad ahead of time. But in general, the plate method, half the plate is non-starchy vegetables. Then a quarter of the plate is your starch, and a quarter of your plate is your protein. Your protein would be your chicken, your fish, your poultry, and your starch would be your rice, potato, and pasta. So really quick and easy, think about your palm. Your palm, not your entire hand, but your palm is your protein source, and your fist is your grain source. I mean, that's the portion that you're looking for on your plate, okay? And certainly be aware of foods that have carbohydrates. Again, carbohydrates are only foods that come from the ground or are grown from the ground, so it's anything that's a grain, a starch, a fruit, a sugar, those types of things. Another thing to do is to ask for the take-home container to be brought at the time the meal is served. You can put extra food away right away, and so then you've naturally portioned what's appropriate for your meal plan, and enjoy the food, and the rest is out of sight, out of mind. A couple other things is to slow down your eating, is to put your fork down between your bites, and to chew your food thoroughly. Those also help with hunger regulation and prevent you from feeling dissatisfied. And just a final tip on dessert, you could perhaps split a dessert, maybe have a bite or two. A lot of times restaurants will bring the dessert and the number of forks or spoons for the number of people at the table. They're quite willing to do that because they also want to have a good tip. So I hope that those tips were helpful. And of course enjoy the socialization of dining out too. All right. Well, again, thank you both so much for being a big part of these series. I hope you at home are getting valuable information, and that makes a big difference in your blood sugar control. Please don't hesitate to contact me if I can be part of your team. In our next episode, we still are going to continue on the topic of blood sugar control. And we're going to talk about the highs and the lows of glucose, including what the symptoms and causes are, and really, really nail it down so that you guys can understand how to manage the blood sugars. And we'll give you tips on how to treat both. So thank you again for listening, and we wish you good health.